All right, welcome to our extended version of From the Floor. For this podcast, we wanted to take some brokerage topics that are just a little bit more complex, like strategy or technology, and have a longer conversation about them. Today, I'm going to talk about truckload pricing and Greenscreens.ai, which is some tech that I'm really excited about. I have Kevin with me from Greenscreens. Kevin, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, appreciate it. So my name is Kevin Coomes. I'm our Vice President of Sales at Greenscreens. Little background on myself. I come from the industry originally, started actually in the international side, actually over in China, working with international freight, the ocean and the air freight side. On the shipper side, moved into the more domestic space in the US space, back with Carrier Direct, which is now Metaphora, doing some consulting work. Spent a few years brokering freight, grown a team of brokers with a freight forwarder called X Freight out of Florida, and then moved into the tech space a few years later, and joined Revenova TMS for about 5 years from their synthesis, the beginning of Revenova towards the beginning, and then moved over to Greenscreens here in November. So this last year.
Oh, that's great. And I've gotten to know you over the past probably year or so now. So love your background. I think you bring a lot to Greenscreens, and looking forward to talking to you about the topic today. This is the first one of these that I've done outside of these 15-minute short broker interviews. So hopefully it goes well. We'll see.
Happy to be the guinea pig. So
yeah, man, it'll be fun. So we're going to start by kind of laying some foundation here and talking about how brokers price freight, because that kind of plays into why Greenscreens exists. And I'll kind of kick it over to you. What does that process look like, and why is it a problem? And if you want me to do my pantomime of how brokers price freight, let me know.
Yeah, maybe I can give you the Greenscreens version of why Greenscreens, right, first, and what we think about when we think about the problem of pricing freight and the data problem, and then I can let you kind of fill in the blanks on your background, right, and how the process works from a broker perspective. The way that we think about it at Greenscreens, when you're pricing a load, and whether that is on the customer side, right? Whether you're providing a sell rate to the customer to move the freight, or you're working with the carrier to cover freight on the backside as a carrier sales rep. A lot of that today is based on a lot of legacy systems, things that have been around for a while, a lot of tribal knowledge, a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, right? To gather data about a lane, going to a lot of different websites and tech tools to gather data around capacity and what's out there on the load boards. A lot of that data is delayed. It's not real time. A lot of it's working off prior averages, what things, people paid in the past, your own historical data within your own TMS. So it takes a lot of data crunching, right? It takes a lot of number crunching, 5, 10, 20 minutes spending, just doing that research. Typically things humans aren't built to do, right? I can do math, right? But I use a calculator because it's really good at crunching numbers, right? And doing large data sets in fast fashion. And so that's kind of the way we think about it with Greenscreens, the AI that we've created. AI is really good at, processing massive amounts of data, and pricing freight requires that. And so that's kind of why we exist in that realm. And I know you have a lot of background and experience doing that. Maybe talk through the workflow on that, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on a lot of really accurate points there. In terms of the number of data points that brokers look at, and the fact that people just aren't necessarily designed to ingest that much data. If I walk through what my process was, or what some of the other people that I know in the industry, their process is, it looks like you get a rate, you're asked by your customer for a rate, you're going to check your pricing tool. Then you're going to kind of verify whether you believe that pricing tool. So you're going to look at the amount of reporting, you're going to look at the trends over time, you're going to look at surrounding markets, your internal history, the hot market maps. Then you decide, okay, my pricing tool says $1.75 a mile, but based on all of this other stuff that I've looked at, I feel like I need to bump this up to $1.85 a mile. Is that pretty accurate with what your experience in the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. And my foray into truckload was interesting because I was more so on the international side originally, and then originally with Carrier Direct, we were working with LTL. And so I got into truckload later. We did some consulting projects with it initially at Carrier Direct. And then when I worked with some of the brokers that I hired to grow some of that business at X Freight, it's all very black box, right? Mm-hmm. The data's out there, the information's out there, the market exists, but what is it? Where do you get it? Where do you find out what the price of a truck is from Chicago to Dallas right now? And it's exactly as you described, going to several different places for the checks and balances to figure out what that is. It's what we're trying to do with Greenscreens is synthesize that, right? Bring that process down. let the system figure all that out, bring all those data points together and look at the impact of those on a price so that we can just deliver that to the broker.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like, it can be tough to kind of break through that because there is a lot of reliance on tribal knowledge. And then there's this kind of perceived expertise, because like I personally was a guy who fancied myself pretty good at pricing, and I know a lot of other guys in the industry who like also fancy themselves really good at pricing, but the reality is like they just can't ingest that much data, which I think plays into Greenscreens. So like, let's look at where Greenscreens fits in. So in one sentence, what is Greenscreens?
In a sentence. Okay. So
one sentence.
Greenscreens is a dynamic pricing tool that provides real-time predictive truckload buy rates, and those rates are customized to your brokerage and your buying power.
I think that's a great sentence. A lot of tech companies can't sum up their tech in one sentence. So I'm glad you could.
There's a lot more layers there, but that's
that's a good description. We'll dive into the different layers. Don't worry. But no, I think that's a great summary of Greenscreens. It makes sense. So let me ask this as kind of a follow-up question. Like, what's the value in that? What's the value proposition for a freight broker? Why should they entertain something like Greenscreens?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because the way you described the process before, right? In going through all these data sets to come up with these numbers and do what you need to do to figure out what the market might be, right? And still maybe you're wrong at the end of the day. Our idea, kind of our one-liner for customers in terms of value proposition is quote more efficiently, more quickly, more accurately, and win more business more profitably. The idea is not just to go out and win a bunch of loads off of a number, but also to ensure that those loads have the right accuracy level so that the profit margins that you put on them, when your carrier sales rep goes back to cover them, he's not choking out the sales rep that sold it for too low because he can't cover it, right, for the truck, for the right price. And then you're upside down on the load or that sort of thing. So that's really the way that we think about this is trying to take exactly what you described in that process with the seasoned sales rep or carrier sales rep and be able to scale that, right, exponentially within the business, utilizing the data, the tribal knowledge, all those things out of that person's head to create that accuracy in the rates, the confidence in the rates. Your worst rep, your best rep, they're all working off of the same accuracy and confidence.
No, I like that. I think that hits on a couple of things that are really important to brokers. In my experience, I'll generalize and say brokers care about two things. They care about having more freight on their board, just getting more business, and then two, making more money on that freight. And if I just kind of parrot back what you said to make sure I'm understanding correctly, you guys are going to help them win more business in terms of, well, you're going to be quoting more accurately and you can quote more aggressively because of that. And as a result, you're going to get more business and you're going to be more profitable on that business because of the accuracy, right? You're quote more quickly and accurately, so you'll win more business more profitably.
Exactly. I think it's like the same idea that most brokers have in their head anyways, every single day, right? If I could quickly work through these loads, get them off of my board, right? We could quote more loads to win more shipments and I can cover those loads, right? Maybe I'm covering 100 today as a carrier sales rep. Can I cover 150 of those loads tomorrow in the same amount of time and then enable those customer sales reps to go out and win more business? But not only do that, but also make more money, right? Increase the margin percentages. It's not just protecting margin percentages, it's actually adding more profit with less time spent on more loads.
Makes sense. Talk to me about the accuracy a little bit. It's a broad word, but how accurate are you guys?
Yeah, so accuracy is a huge thing for us. It's really, accuracy is a huge measurement whenever you're working with AI or you're working with predictive analytics, because that is our success criteria. The only way that we know, the AI is unassisted, right? This isn't a weighted algorithm. It's not something that we're adjusting behind the scenes. So the only way that we know that the AI is actually working, that the models that we're putting in place and the statistical predictions that we're putting in place are working, is by checking our numbers. So what we actually do is we go through every single load that a broker books on Greenscreen, like in using Greenscreens, right? They book it in their TMS. We see the load after they're done booking it. And we go back and check the prediction that was made on that actual lane at that actual real time when they book the load. And then we look at the margin of error, right? We see how close we were. Were we 6% high? Were we 5% low? Were we 10% high? Were we 12% lower than that number that they actually booked the truck for? And that's how we measure that accuracy. Our customers today on that margin of error basis are anywhere from 6 to 8% or less across every load that they book. So to put that in perspective, you have days that you're going to book a lot of them that are, Greenscreens predict the rate, you book the load, we were 1% off, right? What you actually booked the load for. We're going to have situations where we were 25% off because carrier might have fallen off at the last minute. There might be some other extraneous circumstances that we can't account for, right? That there may be other loads that fall into larger margin of error when you actually do it. Looking at all of those cases, looking at all of those loads, every customer we have is 6 to 8% or less when we predict a rate and they book a truck.
Okay. Do you know how that compares to other pricing tools? If you don't want to answer that, you don't have to. I'm asking you questions. I'm asking you questions that I would want to ask if I were a broker doing a demo.
We don't know specifically. We don't have their data and we don't have the information on that. They don't report that data. Yeah. I'm reporting it right now, right? Because you're going to share this with people and we stand behind that, right? I mean, we're definitely one that preaches this, right? That this is something you should require, that you want to require amongst your tech providers, right? To stand behind that guarantee. We guarantee every customer on Greenscreens is sub 10% on that margin of error before they go live. That's our standard number, is sub 10%. If they can't get below sub 10%, something's wrong. We should be below that number with every customer. We've seen some analysis from other customers of ours that we didn't do that made some comparisons to other tools. They were anywhere from 18, 19 to 20% plus off on comparing the number that was given to them and the number that they actually booked the truck for, which is a pretty wide range, right? You're talking about a situation of going from, if you use that number, put your markup on it and just sold it to, you're upside down at that point if you're 20% off. So it's still a situation where you want to finesse this, right? There's still that we need to make sure that the conditions are good, that there's capacity there, right? There's a lot of things that we account for in our algorithms. There's data we bring in around the market conditions as well that plays into those predictions. And so we actually use a confidence level on rates as well. And the confidence level isn't about the rate accuracy. The confidence level, it's a 0 to 100 scale, and it tells you how good that lane is conditions wise to go out, how quickly you can find a truck for that price. And on that basis, we're probably even more accurate. I'd say we're anywhere from 1 to 3% or less. We predict a rate, they book a load on a high confidence lane. We're usually within 1 to 3% of that number. So I know that was a roundabout way to answer your question, but
No,
you know,
I
we
mean,
don't have that data specifically, but we pride ourselves on being able to show that data to our customers.
yeah, no, I mean, like it sounds like anecdotally, at least from some other data from your customers, you've seen a difference of between like other tools being up to 18-19%, whereas you guys are sub 10%, which I think is amazing. Like circling back to the confidence levels a little bit, you talked about how Greenscreens helps folks quote more quickly, like which I think is huge. That confidence level must play into that too, right? In terms of like firing off quotes to customers as quickly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So the confidence level plays into a couple factors for our customers. One, it's their margin levels first and foremost, right? If you have a lower confidence, means the market condition is worse. So you probably want to make sure you're covered on those loads, right? Put a little more margin on it. Make sure that you can find a carrier. Make sure that you're protecting your carrier sales guy at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece of that is exactly what you just said. How quickly should I do a little more research, right? Maybe I should make sure that we have a couple more carriers in this lane, that we have some guys that we've used in the past, or you know, sometimes do I want to quote this business, right? You don't want every piece of business if it's bad business that you can't cover. So it plays in a multitude of factors, but the confidence level is just like everything else, right? If the rate is accurate within a certain degree and the number is right, and that confidence level helps them support that analysis around, you know, load to truck ratios and tender volumes and you know, the price elasticity, a lot of different things that play into that confidence piece around the market condition. It saves them that step. They don't have to go back out there and do all that research to make sure they're covered, because we're already doing that with Greenscreens.
Makes sense. From here, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and go back to kind of diving into how Greenscreens works a little bit more. So your one sentence description was that it's a dynamic pricing tool that provides like real-time predictive truckload buy rates customized to a brokerage. So I want to walk through that a little bit. When you say predictive buy rates, tell me what you mean by that, because I know brokers give pushback in terms of, well, the truckload market's so volatile, you can't predict truckload rates. Like, what does that mean?
I mean, they're not wrong. It's not easy to predict truckload buy rates. Yeah. So what we mean by predictive buy rates is it's not just taking a bunch of load prices, right? What brokers covered loads for, and then putting them into a pool, and then looking at the, you know, the average of that rate from this market to that market. It truly is taking the load data, taking other market data, like I talked about, around conditions, fuel, economic, you know, indicators, capacity indicators, indexes, things like that, bringing all of that in to train the AI so it understands what the market is doing right now when you request a rate from it. And then it is actually going to tell you what it thinks the real-time price is on that. It's not just aggregating data and spitting out an average. It's literally analyzing all that data in real time and spitting out a prediction of Chicago to Dallas or something.
It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, it sounds like a more sophisticated version, much more sophisticated, of what brokers are doing right now. I mean, in effect, the brokers are attempting to predict rates, right? I mean, no one's asking, well, sometimes there, but a lot of times a customer is asking for a rate for a load that's moving a week from now. And brokers a lot of time are doing their best to predict, well, based on all this data that I'm seeing, like I figure it's going to be this rate in a week. But you guys are able to just ingest a lot more data and use the AI and machine learning to do it in a way that's going to be much more accurate. Is that accurate the way I said that?
Yeah, absolutely. The struggle for any individual human being, right, is to digest billions of real-time data points, download them into their brain, right, and then transact that back out, right? Figure out what it means real quickly and easily, and then infer off of all that data how that's going to impact, in our situation, a truck price. computers don't have that problem. Humans can think faster than a computer. They cannot multitask as much as anybody would like to think that they can, right? They can't process several different thoughts at the same time, whereas an AI can do that. And so what we do is twofold. In real time, it's processing all those data points to come up with a prediction based on the current models that we're using. And then the other thing that we do is kind of what I mentioned about like downloading the data into the brain and retraining the brain, right? We do that every single day with the AI. So we actually retrain the model every day, and it actually adjusts algorithms. It actually adjusts weighting, right? And things like that every single day. Capacity could be impacting it more. Fuel rates going up could be impacting it more. Any myriad of factors could be making adjustments to all of those lanes and all of the prices across the different markets, right? And so if you think about, just a general broker and trying to figure out what every 5-digit zip to 5-digit zip change is in the market across the whole country. So I'm going with this. It's impossible. You couldn't do it. Wouldn't take you a day. It would take you a year, many years to go through all, billions of whatever lane combos between zip codes to see those updates.
Yeah, I think that's a great description of that. Tell me a little bit about you say it's customized for an individual broker. What does that entail, and what's the impact of that for a brokerage?
Yeah, so a huge piece of the puzzle for us, and I think a differentiation of this as well to prior tools for rating freight, is that we're not only just providing a market rate, this is what the market is doing, because anyone who's ever brokered freight knows that that's a fallacy, right? Broker A, broker B, broker C, they all have different rates. They all broker the same lane differently. There's different impacts on those rates. There's different things that impact those buying behaviors with the trucks and the selling behaviors to the customers. And so it's going to change their price to procure a truck, regardless of if it's, they're all looking at Chicago to Dallas in my previous example. And so what we try to do first and foremost with every customer when we implement them on Greenscreens, we take their historical data, we take as much of it as possible. This goes back to my point about downloading it into the brain, right? And we download it into the AI. we download it from them, upload it to the AI rather, and then we train the AI with just their brokerage characteristics first, so that it learns not just the prices that they pay, but the customers that they have, the carriers they have in their networks, the days and times a week that they're booking freight, the seasonality, all the other impacts, right, that actually affect and impact why they pay what they pay in a specific lane. And then we combine it with all the other data we're using from all the brokerages out there that we're bringing in data from in those different markets and lanes, as well as all that additional market condition and market data that I said impacts the pricing prediction. The key to that too is that we clean up the data. So we don't just dump it all in, we filter it, clean it, we set the filters, and then the filters exist going forward. So any new data that comes in from the customers, which we bring in mostly in real time via APIs from their systems, like they book a load, they get a tender acceptance, there's a rate, we see it, all those get filtered. So we get rid of the outliers, we get rid of the things that don't really fit in, because we don't want to negatively train the AI either, right? We don't want to train it on bad data that causes bad rates. So.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's spot on to me. I mean, it aligns with everything that I've experienced. I mean, the reality is that while having a market rate is nice, the reality is that like a $10 million broker versus a $100 million broker versus like a $1 billion broker have very different buying powers. And the idea that one single rate is going to apply to every single one of those brokerages, is kind of nonsense,
Yeah.
You can go further, and
I should add to that too. We do have a network rate prediction in Greenscreens that is unbiased by anybody's individual buying power. It's basically what a market rate would be, right? If we just ran the AI prediction across all the data sets and everything without that individualized customized model for the individual broker. And so we really actually give 2 data points. We give the network rate prediction, which is that, and then we give the target buy rate, which is for the individual broker. 20 of our customers could run the same lane at the same time and have a different target buy rate.
No, that's cool. I really like that. So we've talked about like the real-time data, the clean data, the fact that it's customized and predictive. Is there anything else about like Greenscreens itself, like how it works that you want to touch on before we kind of jump into a couple other questions?
Yeah, I think the other thing too is it's not just the AI, it's not just the predictions. We also provide a lot of decision-making support around it within our UI. We can integrate it into a TMS via API, or we have embedding toolkits so they could just use our UI, and we do this. And most of the data points that we can provide to a broker are integratable as well. But we're going to give them short-term history, long-term history. We're going to give them other tips around a lane, trends, negotiation ideas with customers and carriers around when you bought it, last time you bought that lane, the carriers you use, things like that. What carriers you used in the past, all the decision support, that's what we call it, around why that rate is the way it is, and the conversations to have with your customers and carriers when making those decisions. So there's a lot of that goes into it as well, to use the analytics, right, to be more accurate, to be more precise, because the AI is great and it is super accurate as I described, but you still got to be able to have the conversation, right, at the end of the day,
Yeah,
and understand what you're doing. And so we provide a lot of that data as well, and we're continuing to expand upon that. We're working on some more advanced analytics around the data, some more pricing strategy information for like salespeople around margins and where to be to win freight more accurately, or more effectively, more accurate sell pricing rather to win freight more effectively, things like that. So.
okay. Yeah, I mean, like anything you can do to facilitate those conversations, I think is huge. So I'm glad you guys have that stuff incorporated too. Let me kind of switch gears a little bit here and ask this question. Who's Greenscreens for? Like, do you have to be a certain size or a certain freight mix to get value out of it? If I'm a $10 million brokerage who moves a bunch of flatbed freight, like is Greenscreens for me?
It's a good question, because people ask that a lot. Really,
like I said,
yeah.
common questions.
Really, anybody, anybody could utilize the tool, because we make it pretty accessible. We make it, I would say the one thing that we also kind of pride ourselves on is making it user-friendly for the brokers. So it doesn't require a lot of training. You don't need a PhD to decipher the stars in Greenscreens to figure out what we're trying to tell you. We have 65 brokers and 3PLs that are on Greenscreens today. The smallest customer we have only moves about 3 to 4 million in revenue a year. Right now, they're just getting started as a broker. Our largest customer on Greenscreens moves about 850 million in freight a year. And there's any myriad of customers in between there that use Greenscreens today. So we don't price it on a transaction basis. We don't price it on a user basis. We price it on the size of the business to make it accessible, right, from a budget standpoint for small and large brokers. Because really at the end of the day, our goal is to try to help create a better standard around how and why they're pricing freight across the market. And we can't do that if we only work up market or down market. We have to be able to level that playing field for users. So,
okay, good answer. My last question for you here is something that I know is a sticking point for a lot of brokers. How do you make sure Greenscreens actually gets used? It's a huge complaint I hear because folks, they get this technology that it just kind of sits there as decoration on their computers that no one actually uses. How do you ensure adoption of it?
Yeah, so it's it's a common thing I think for any technology company as you're selling new technology to people to get more adoption, to get more users on the system, actively using it every single day. I think for us, I think from a management level down, there's different various use cases for what Greenscreens can provide, right? Managers have a lot of data analytics and things that we provide to them with the accuracy of the rates, right? What they're booking the freight for. We have some business intelligence tools we can offer to them to show them just how accurate their reps are booking around the prices that we're predicting and the rates that they're selling for. So disseminating that information, owning that as the management, driving down the confidence to the reps. I don't mean the confidence level, but the confidence in the rates, right?
Yeah.
We know these rates are accurate. They've shown us the data. We can see right here that it is as close as we know it is to be. So don't tell me the rates are bad, right? Those things I think are huge. And I think that's why we are so adamant about giving that data and being transparent with our customers on showing them how accurate the rates are so they can take that out to the reps, right? Because what starts to happen there is when they can drive that out and get that buy-in from the reps that the rates do actually work and they are accurate to the real-time market and what's going on out there, you start seeing reps get wins, right? Oh, I've quoted this customer 1 million times and I've never won their business. I used Greenscreens and I won a load because the price was more accurate. I wasn't pricing too high maybe now, right? But still getting the margin levels that I want. And then we were able to cover the load also for that same price. You start to get that ball rolling, right? Where other people are like, damn, they're winning more freight, they're booking more loads. They're getting out of here faster. John covered 200 loads today and is out playing golf in the afternoon. And I'm still here trying to cover my 100th load today. Things like that start to drive that adoption amongst the organization. But it all comes from the top, right? Like you have to commit with any new technology, I think, to that transition from the old way of doing things and the old habits. Otherwise, you're pretty hopeless, right? So get it into your processes, get it disseminated to your people. And I guess that's another good point too. We can integrate it, right? So we can get it in your TMS. We can get it in your workflow. We can integrate it into other partners, other tools for automation, things like that. So that's another big thing for us at Greenscreens is really pushing the idea that we don't just want to be another place to go for a rate, but also integrate to all your solutions to automate bids, automate quotes, do other things that can fit it into your broker's workflow.
No, that makes sense. I like what you said about, one, starting from the top, and then two, like disseminating that data. Because again, I mentioned earlier about how like brokers care about two things. It goes down to the seat level too, right? Like folks need to see that whatever they're using is like actually generating results for them in terms of like profit and additional load count. And they need to know that like this technology is actually what's driving that. So I like that you do that as kind of a illustration for them. That's kind of all the questions I had. Wrapping up, do you have any kind of parting comments, anything we missed about Greenscreens that you want to mention?
No, I think that's kind of what we do. The only thing I'd add is that, I kind of mentioned this just now, but like with all the tech providers that are out there today, right? There's a lot of other tech vendors. And I know we talked about this when you asked me to come on and do this, and you're going to highlight some of those other tech vendors going forward. But ask these questions, right? Like ask for the transparency, ask for the proof in the pudding behind what they're selling you. And also look to integrate and adopt those tools in an integrated fashion, right? I think one misconception that we have a lot, like we partner with companies like HubTech and AVRL and others that are doing quote automation, right? We integrate with a lot of TMS providers and have great partnerships with them. I was just at Tide TMS last week in California at their user summit. They invited us and Parade out to kind of present to some of their users around our integration and how it works together. Parade's another one, somebody that we would partner with to be able to use Greenscreens as an engine and a vehicle to price freight, and then go out and use an automation tool or a bid tool to quote and bid that freight. We produce the rate, they handle the automation. We work really well together and we have these partnerships. But I think that's kind of the future of our industry is getting those right tools in place, getting them to work together. And we're all about that. I think that's an increasingly important part of the industry as a whole. So I guess it's not really about Greenscreens, but just mission statement in general around doing your due diligence and getting the right tech partners that want to partner and integrate and work together. I think the days of a one size fits all, one solution provider to do everything is dying. That's going to be gone in 3, 4, 5 years. And so you're going to need really good, really transparent, really honest, straightforward tech partners to partner to be able to help make your whole process more efficient.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a big fan of your guys' approach to partnerships and the general like tech and transportation ecosystem. I know a lot of other technology companies out there are starting to adopt that more and more. I'm a big fan of it. I'm going to wrap it up. Like one of my big goals for this particular series was just to like shine a light on some of the different tech out there and ask some questions that I would want to know if I were a broker evaluating the technology. And I hope this accomplished that, at least to some degree. So thanks for jumping on with me. I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. Hopefully folks got a different perspective on how they could be pricing truckload freight and some idea of why I think you guys are doing such interesting stuff. So Kevin, if someone wants to reach out to you, how do they do it?
A couple different ways you can reach us. So our website, which I know will be with all the materials and stuff with this, I'm sure, but is greenscreens.ai, exactly like the company name. So you can go there, you could request a demo. We'll get back to you same day on that to set something up. You can reach out to me. It's just first name dot last name Kevin.Coomes at greenscreens.ai. Yeah, we're growing pretty fast. We're doing tons of demos. I think the market is in a place that is great for us right now with all the volatility and everything going on. I know. So I think it's been hard on a lot of people, but we're solving a lot of those problems. So yeah, reach out to us and we can help out.
Perfect. All right. Thanks again for being on, Kevin. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, man. You too.